The following is a conversation with Robert Woodhead. Robert is best known as one of the founders of Animeigo, one of the longest-lasting anime licensing and distribution companies in North America. Robert is also one of the creators of Wizardry, one of the oldest and most influential computer RPGs. In this episode, we talk with Robert about...
What the f*** are you doing?
Oh, well, you know, we had like a really important guest on for this episode, so I want to do like a Lex Fridman style intro.
Who the fuck's Lex Fridman?
He's like on like popular interview podcasts.
The f*** you mean important guest? We're representing him with a f***ing body pillow. Just roll the intro.
So, hello and welcome to the Weeb crew. I am your host, Psiotic. I am joined as always by my co-host, Mumi.
Hello.
And today we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Robert Woodhead of Animeigo.
Hi
there. Robert, thanks so much for coming on. I understand it's been pretty busy during retirement.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm certainly keeping myself busy.
So, well, I guess what's all been going on with that then? Because I know you and your wife run Animeigo, and you are basically stepping down and handing the company over to Justin Savakis of Media OCD.
That's correct.
So, I guess like to start off then, like what kind of how did that decision come about? What spurred that on, essentially?
Well, I hit 65 and got enrolled in that sweet socialized medicine. And we were thinking about what we want to do. And both of us wanted to sort of take it a little easier. And we were also kind of a little concerned about what the long-term future of Animeigo would be if we weren't going to be devoting full time to it anymore. And so we just thought that the best thing to do was to pass it on to somebody that we thought would continue it in the kind of goofy spirit that the company has always had. And of all the people we knew in the anime business, Justin is kind of the goofiest. So we started talking with him and worked out an arrangement to basically pass on the sort of retail side of the company to him. And at the same time, we had several Kickstarter projects that were sort of in the works, Macross 2 being one of them. And we felt kind of like an obligation to continue those and to see them through to completion. So basically, our retirement plan is over the next couple of years, we're going to be doing a couple more Kickstarter projects and doing these kind of limited edition, special releases of titles, and then once the limited editions are done, they're going to get re-released by Justin in the sort of in the mass market, so to speak, and then. Following that, Justin is also going to be doing Kickstarters and stuff like that. So, basically, over the next couple of years, we're stepping back, he's stepping forward. We're always available to advise him, but, it's his baby now, and we're looking forward to seeing what he manages to do with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think I caught a YouTube stream that he had done maybe a month or two ago now, where he was basically talking about the acquisition and his sorts of plans and ideas and what would be going on with Animeigo going forward. So it's interesting to hear that you're not like just fully stepping back. You are still planning to do a few more Kickstarters going forward for the time being, anyway.
Yeah.
You mentioned Macross too. I did want to ask you kind of what drew y'all to like actually picking that up and licensing Macross, like, because I feel like that's like the redheaded stepchild in the Macross pantheon. Like whenever it gets like, whenever everyone talks about Macross, like in the Japanese context, like they do events or something, Macross 2 is always the one that's just kind of left out.
I didn't even know it existed up until maybe like a month before that Kickstarter was announced. And I was like, wow, okay.
Really?
And I've been aware from Macross for like years and just never heard about it.
Well, I guess the best way to explain it is that these kind of things sort of come together organically in terms of at any particular point in time, we have like several options about what we want our next project to be. And we just kind of look at them. And of course, they're always in flux. So like, you know, it's like juggling balls and you never know which balls are in the air and which balls are in your hands. And so like things look like you're going to be able to do them and then you can't do them, or it may take like 3 or 4 years for all the pieces to come together in just the right way. And, you know, so when it was time to decide on what our next Kickstarter project would be, Big West said, hey, would you like to do Macross 2? And of the projects that we had, it seemed like it would be the most fun project, and also a new title that we hadn't done any work on before. So, you know, for me, I've always found that it's always best to work on titles you really like and projects you think are going to be interesting, that may have an interesting technical challenge or some other thing that kind of like sets it apart. And Macross 2 turned out to check all the boxes. So we said, sure, why not? Let's do it.
It's interesting because it gets no love in Japan, like whatsoever. So it's just like when it was announced, I was like, man, that's an interesting choice.
Going to get a high quality Animeigo release. It's going to be on Disney Plus along with most of the other Macross series, which was surprising when that was announced too. It's nice to see that, like, because I know the Macross franchise has for the longest time been in a sort of like rights snafu between all these different companies, and it's nice to see that it is, at least to some extent, getting out of those weeds now, and things are starting to be brought outside of Japan. Like, I don't think Macross 7 has ever been like officially released outside of Japan.
No, I don't think so.
Well, these sort of things, they just kind of weirdly come together. And as you know, like almost a quarter century ago, we released the original Macross TV series. So it seemed like it would be kind of fun to do the sequel as well.
Go back to it after however many years. Yeah.
And also, this release will be like the definitive Macross 2 release. Mm-hmm. There's already been a Blu-ray out in Japan, but ours is going to be 4K UHD. We have extra interviews. The art book is going to be insane. It's currently running at over 200 pages.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
and you said 4K as well?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the things that happened with the Kickstarter is the Kickstarter blew up so much that we just said, screw it. We're going to release it on a 4K combo. And we upgraded everybody for free to getting it both on Blu-ray and in 4K.
Oh,
so
wow.
if you have a UHD player, you get it. Otherwise, you just pop in the Blu-ray.
Okay. Because I remember, like, I attended the Otakon panel last year, and someone asked about that, and you guys seemed kind of like, well, 4K is new and everything, but I guess if we can get enough money for it, then we could do it, and that seems to be what happened. So that's really cool to hear.
At a certain point, the economies of scale are such that we have a certain amount budgeted for literally for pressing the discs, and when the units quantities get up high enough, it sort of really doesn't cost that much more to do both.
Okay.
So and we hadn't done a 4K release before, so again, that'd be kind of like a fun thing to do. So why not?
Yeah. Were there any additional challenges to doing that as well, in terms of like getting like a higher quality scan of the film masters for the OVA?
We had to get 4K scans, and we're having to do what is it? HDR color grading. Because realistically, the big advantage of the UHD Blu-rays is the color. I mean, when you get for anime, once you get HD, the difference between HD and Blu-ray and UHD in terms of like the actual what you can see on the screen. I mean, it's a little bit, but it's not that much.
Right.
Okay. But what you really get is color.
Okay. Like there's a greater color depth, bit depth to those
it's
4K
got
discs.
it's got a wider color gamut, the HDR, so you get more of the range of color that's actually on the film.
And were those made with like the actual like film masters, or are
yes.
these being? Oh, nice.
It's none of this up-res crap. Everything is from the original, their original film assets, and they're still finding film assets they didn't know they had. Like literally a week or two ago, they found the last major film asset that we really, really wanted to get, which was, of all things, the eye catch in the middle of each episode. They found the film for that, so we can get a 4K scan of that.
Just in the back of some warehouse, probably poorly labeled and stored away somewhere.
Well, maybe not quite that, but it was sort of we had to go and we were going through all the assets and said, yeah, well, the eye catch currently we only have it in HD. Can you go and see if you can find it? And they said, oh yeah, we know where that is.
Oh.
Sometimes it's about just knowing the right question to ask.
Well, I guess that kind of leads us into I know you've kind of talked about like the importance of like we're kind of at that point where you need to start kind of making moves toward kind of preserving like film and stuff like that. And y'all make this concerted effort as far as like bringing all these like production materials together and making like the best release possible. Have you seen like is there like a concerted effort on like the Japanese side, like from not necessarily like fans and stuff, but like as from like the business and like the licensors and stuff like that? Is there kind of more of an effort being made to like archive these things and kind of keep track of them, or like is it still kind of this just an old kind of thing, or like how has that kind of evolved, I guess?
It depends on the production company. Some of them are really, really good about keeping everything. Some of them kept everything but don't know where it is. And with others, it's like, a little bit hit or miss. And sometimes the best source for materials for those films is actual fans who like have like copies of the sette and stuff like that. Big West is like top tier. They kept everything. and they know where almost all of it is. So sometimes it's that they have this massive haystack of they kept everything, and you have to try and sift through it to find the thing you actually want, but they got it.
Huh.
It's just like, it's in a huge pile of like materials from, they kept everything. They are complete pack rats, which is amazing. And, so getting materials for this project has been one of the easiest projects we've had to deal with.
Has there even been like an issue of like having too much stuff to work with and being like, oh gosh, I don't know if we can fit all this in?
200-page art book, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah, I'm desperately looking to see if there's stuff in that we don't really need that. But yeah, I look at it and I go, I don't want to cut that. I'm certainly not cutting any of the color art. I got 40 pages of color art, of like illustration art. It's just
really nice.
Yeah. I mean, we even managed to get some illustration art from some of the US made stuff that people had kept.
Oh.
So, yeah, we got masses of stuff.
Just a ton of stuff. And this is like for like all of Macross, essentially, not just Macross 2.
It's like Big West has everything for all of their series. Everything they've ever done, they kept.
Wow.
They were hugely smart about that. So, when 3D Ultra HD 8K Blu-rays come out, they're all set.
They're in the I mean, that's smart, because I mean that is what a lot of demand is. There's a lot of demand for that now, it seems. People really like those sorts of extra production materials. I think that's like, to a certain extent, I think that's what also like really drives people to buy physical media nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean, the latest thing they found, this was like a month ago, is they realized that they had the optical soundtrack for the English theatrical version of Macross 2.
Oh.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting because it's different from the version that was released on DVD.
That's kind of weird. Like, that's not really common, right? Like, they don't really just change the soundtrack between like a theatrical release of DVD or whatever.
It's a bit crazy, and I still am like, I'm still piecing through it to find out exactly what the differences are. But first of all, this theatrical soundtrack has only been heard by people who actually saw Macross 2 in theaters in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. That was the only time it was ever used. Now, it is mostly the same, but they recast 2 of the actors.
Oh.
Okay. And those actors, it's as I understand it, in the DVD release, one of the actors only appears in one episode, and the other actor that they recast, they only recast him after episode 2. So the character is played by one actor in episodes 1 and 2, and the second actor in episodes 3 through 6. But when they did the movie, they apparently redid the soundtrack to use that second actor in episodes 1 and 2 as well, in parts 1, in those parts, as well as recasting the character that only appears in episode 1.
Right.
Huh.
So we'll effectively have 2 English dub soundtracks well, we're going to have the theatrical movie soundtrack, and then we're going to have alternate soundtracks for episodes 1 and 2 that feature the original voice actors that were on the DVD release. But for some reason, I haven't gotten word back exactly why they didn't like backfix the episodes 1 and 2 when they did the DVD release.
Huh.
Yeah.
So is that gonna be something y'all are gonna be doing, like retrofitting the movie kind of dialogue with the episodes, or?
Yeah. My current plan, subject to change, is we're going to use the theatrical soundtrack because it's consistent about voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. And because people haven't heard it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, unless you actually bought a ticket back in the day, you have never heard this.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're going to, because you can add extra soundtracks, we're going to have an alternate English soundtrack, at least for episodes 1 and 2, that has what was originally on the DVD.
Yeah, I never even heard of it. Like
the latest bizarre thing in this.
I didn't even know there was a movie version of Macross that played in U.S. theaters.
Yeah, I don't think it played widely. It may have only played like at a convention.
Yeah, or like maybe a very, very limited release of which, probably only like a handful of people saw that, let alone, I'm imagining someone watched that movie and then got a physical release and was confused by why the characters sounded different. And it's like, oh.
I'm just imagining like a Mandela effect where he's like, this isn't the track that played for the scene. He's like trying to explain to people for years and no one believes him.
Yeah, it's when you do this kind of work, you find out all these weird things that happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the fun parts. Although it's extra work. I literally have been working on aligning audio tracks for the last couple of days.
To the animation. That sounds like a nightmare.
It's not hugely difficult. It's just kind
tedious.
of a little bit like tedious. Especially with soundtracks that come off of film, because as you know, film is 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
Video these days, HD and UHD, is 23.976.
Yep.
Okay.
Ever so slightly different.
What they do when you take a movie and put it on home video is you speed ramp the audio.
Okay.
You literally slow it down by to 0.999 of the original speed. And that stretches it enough so that now it precisely aligns with the 23.976.
Yeah.
Okay. Except that film isn't perfect, and especially back in the day when you're talking about analog tape audio, that speed isn't quite perfect. So even it will tend to drift a little bit. Like over a period of 2 or 3 minutes, it'll drift like half a frame or a frame out of sync. So you have to go through and like hand correct it and adjust things and say, okay, I'm going to slice half frame of audio out here or extend half frame of audio and just butt things together. You have to find like quiet areas where you can tweak it to kind of jog it back into synchronization again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then just having to do that over and over again.
Looking for the sound effects. The sound effects are great because they're always going to be at the same point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I that's what I spent my afternoon doing.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be just a little tedious.
I'm just imagining it's like one of those images. It's like what people think I do, and it's something fairly glamorous versus what I actually do. And it's just staring at a monitor for long periods.
Yeah, I mean, I probably am undiagnosed ADHD. I mean, I can focus really strongly, but I'm very easily distracted.
Sure.
So I tend to find that this kind of work is convenient for me to do in like 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll go do something else. But it's easy to just get in there, do some for a while, and then go do something else before I get bored with it. So it kind of works. Same thing with like subtitling. It kind of fits into, my particular sort of way of doing stuff. Like if I had to do the same thing for 8 hours, I would go insane.
Yeah.
Especially as something that is like subtitling quality control. Yeah. Like just watching it over and over again, looking for any sort of mistakes or errors or mistimings.
Yeah, and the problem is if you get too familiar with something, you don't see what's there. You see what you expect to see. That's how most of the mistakes made. That's why I always try to have like 2 or 3 other people just watch the thing, because they'll catch the errors that you saw 10 times and didn't notice because you saw what you expected to see, not what was actually there.
Yeah.
Like a duplicate of a specific word that you just kind of just gloss over because your brain isn't picking up the second word. It's just reading.
Yeah. That's a very common one. I've had that happen to me.
I guess since you were kind of talking about like bizarre things with the Macross 2 soundtrack, there's the famous kind of infamous story of you finding Project 𝓑𝓐𝓤𝓣. Is that as bizarre as it sounds like on the surface? Because it's like you were given the opportunity to license Project 𝓑𝓐𝓤𝓣 or Maddox originally from
right,
and you end up going with Maddox, and then 20 years later you're re-releasing like an HD version of Maddox, and you find Project 𝓑𝓐𝓤𝓣 in the process. Like, is that just a weird coincidence? Like, is that as bizarre sounding as it actually is? Like, sounds, or?
I think it sounds more bizarre than it actually is. First of all, it's just a law of large numbers. If you've done literally, I don't know how many episodes of stuff I've done, but it's got to be up in the 400 to 500 range. I mean, 200 of them are Urusei Yatsura.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So if you're doing so much stuff over like 30 years, there's bound to be bizarre coincidences. And also, it's the thing where the reason it's remarkable and you guys even hear about it is because it is a coincidence. All the sort of unremarkable
Mm-hmm.
coincidences that aren't funny stories, you never hear about.
Right.
Kind of survivorship bias.
There's I guess a selection bias there.
Right.
But if you were in the industry, for long enough, like weird shit happens.
Yeah, I figured that could be something like that, because like they're not made by the same studio or anything, so it's like you're kind of it's almost like a red herring where it's like they're disconnected, but it's like they could very well just be in the same place. But it's just
they were all stored at Tokyo Film Labs, Tokyo Genzo Show. Okay, which is not unreasonable because Tokyo Genzo Show, just like you watch anime, you look in the credits, you'll see Tokyo Genzo Show in like huge amounts of time. They must have done the film developing for I don't know, 75% of all the stuff Animeigo ever did.
Hmm.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like, they did it for everybody. The really bizarre thing was in this document that they, this PDF that they sent us, that showed all of the titles that they had in storage. They just like, we asked them about Maddox and a couple other things, and they said, "Oh, we don't want to look through the document. Here's the document." They just sent us the whole document, right? They said, "You look through it." The really weird thing was that Maddox and Project ACO were right next to each other, line
Oh my God.
right next to each other in the document. That was the weird thing.
That's
Does that have to
that's
do
the
with,
weird
like-
part that no one's ever heard.
Does that have to do with like the characters or like why?
I have no idea. Maybe
Huh.
it was like they were done about the same time and they just happened to be like in sequence.
They just released
Maybe,
just one after the other. And they just put them into boxes next to each other.
Yep,
Just
they've been
never
sitting
went back
there for
there.
however many years. Well, Tokyo Lab that closed down last November, I believe, too.
Yep.
Which was unfortunate. I think Toho now, because there was like a big. I know when like it was announced they were closing down, it was a big panic of like, well, they have all of this material, and evidently they legally have to dispose of it if the rights holders don't come forward to claim it. And there was a big like concern over like, oh, how much stuff are we going to lose here? But I think Toho ended up stepping in and basically took stewardship of the collection, thankfully. So I don't think anything was disposed of, which is good. But it gets into like this interesting thing of again media preservation and needing to. There's a lot of stuff that still has not been digitized in any capacity, and I guess to a certain extent, digital isn't. There is no permanent format, I guess, but I do feel like, especially now as these film degrades over time, there is seemingly more of a concerted effort towards preserving as much as possible, digitizing as much as possible to save it while it's still possible to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good thing. Better to have and not need than need and not have.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess kind of on the subject of like preservation, I know you've kind of spoken on like anime, or not just like anime, but like intellectual kind of piracy in the past. A lot of people kind of argue for that being like the kind of solution for preservation, because it's like, well, if tons of people have this thing just kind of circulating around, it's not going to get lost. But you've kind of talked about like how it's kind of overstayed, like it's, I guess, like the negative effects it has on the market, which I would kind of agree with, but it seemed like it almost seems like your business model kind of was structured around servicing like people that all kind of were involved with that, like people that were already kind of aware of these shows and were kind of catering toward the people that knew about them and wanted all this like extra stuff. Would you say that was kind of the case, or?
I don't think that was ever an intentional goal. I mean, I think it really dates back to when I was in the computer games business. And back in the day, I really didn't like software piracy. I thought these guys were just ripping me off, and I was pretty outspoken about that.
Sure.
Over the years, reflecting upon it, I no longer think that the effects of piracy were as big as I did when I was in that industry, because the bottom line is, people who pirate it are almost never going to be customers. If they couldn't pirate it, they wouldn't buy it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to a large extent. So, in terms of the hit on sales, it's not as great as I thought it was back in the day. That's not to excuse it. It's still ethically wrong.
Sure.
To pirate stuff. But in terms of its damage, I think it's less damaging than many people think. With Animeigo, sure, I mean, there were 5th generation copies floating around, but when we started up, the idea was that we were going to produce high quality stuff, as high quality as you could get on VHS tape, anyway.
Right? Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And do things like the subtitling and the liner notes and stuff like that to make it more accessible. And the fact that there were tapes being handed around and copied and stuff like that wasn't really a serious concern. And when fan subbing started up, there was sort of an unspoken rule that if a company licensed a title that had been fan subbed, the fan sub would get withdrawn from active distribution by the fan subbing groups.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was fine. And fans of anime being what they were, they'd always want to get a better quality copy. Like I have customers who've bought Bubblegum Crisis on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, and Blu-ray.
Just
And
every
if we came out
format.
with a UHD, I'm sure they would buy it too.
And maybe
So-
still have all of those, just now all displayed on the same shelf.
They almost certainly do.
Yeah. Anime fans, they get really particular about that. I know there's like people that get like real particular as far as like which region has like the best releases as far as like video encoded quality. And
Oh yeah, yeah. And for some reason, Italy is just very common.
My feeling about piracy is just basically, and it has been for probably about 30 years now, has been that it has an effect, but it's not like worth my time to worry about it.
Mhm.
Unless it's somebody being really egregious and like trying to make money off of it.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
the difference between piracy and bootlegging, if you're trying to make money off of it, then
Yeah.
then it becomes sort of an ethical issue, and I'm willing to, like, even if it's not cost effective, it's time to make an example.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But I haven't had to do that, this century.
Yeah. So like, if someone was like, you release your Macross 2 release, and then like a couple months later, someone is just putting out like a bootleg version of that, and it's like with all of like the physical materials, and it's more or less identical. And then it's like, okay, well, come on, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like anime is like in a very like it definitely coming from like the kind of software video game kind of digital distribution stuff. It's definitely a different animal from like early anime, I feel like, because I feel like a lot of the anime movement in the West was kind of spearheaded by like fan subbing and these kind of niche groups kind of just bringing stuff over. And it's technically piracy, but it's like piracy in a way where it's like there's not a official alternative available.
It's filling a demand for which there is no supply.
Right.
Well, like I said, is it legal? No. Is it ethical? Is it something that I'm going to worry about? No. And I think that is at least my impression is that is what the Japanese companies thought too.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, so long as nobody is complaining about it, it's not a problem. Or, so with the fan subgroups, the basic rule was don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If somebody is, you just subtitled the 24 episodes of Kimagure Orange Road and Animeigo just got the license. Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring up Kimagure Orange Road specifically because previously on the podcast, we've had on William Chow, who one was a big fan of Kimagure Orange Road and ran the fan subbing group Arctic Animation out of Canada. Were you ever, like, when you licensed that, were you ever like in contact with him or anyone at Arctic Animation at that time?
I mean, we knew about them, and we knew that. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure we knew that they had done some Kimagure Orange Road stuff, but it was more in terms of just like, hey guys, this is coming out, just so you know, because they were like good about like stepping away gracefully. Yeah. When something went commercial, in terms of like using their translations and stuff like that, we didn't. We always did our own because we had our like particular style.
Yeah.
But that might have been an interesting experiment. It just never happened that way.
So was that like a common, like, was it like a common practice, I guess, back then to like reach out to like fan subbing groups and just kind of give them like a courtesy, kind of like, hey, this is going to be announced next week or something, or this has been announced, if y'all could stop kind of doing that?
In some cases, yeah, we had their email, so we emailed them. Mm-hmm. Other times it was just like, oh, we'll post on rec.arts.anime and then they'll know because they all read it.
Yeah.
Right. Or in terms of giving them sort of advance notice, we were pretty much announcing stuff as soon as the ink was dry on the contract, and we couldn't tell them before the contract was signed. So there was no advance notice. And it was kind of the thing where like, oh, they announced they're going to start working on something and we think we're going to have that contract in a couple of months. We
can't really say anything. Yeah.
We can't really say anything because that might screw up the contract, or it might cause, one of the other companies in the business to make a competing bid and drive up our costs.
Of course. Yeah, definitely.
Right. I guess speaking of your liner notes and stuff, because you mentioned it, kind of went through some of the ones that you did for like Kimagure Orange Road, and it was interesting seeing like all the kind of old ways we used to like write out like Otosan or senpai and all that. I don't know this. I don't know how involved, I guess, on the translation side you might have been, but do you have any kind of like insight into, I guess, why we kind of went about it that way? And then like what the actual like incentive to change over to like instead of OOT or OTOO is we went to OTOU or something like that.
Yeah, and now we'd probably use the O with the little bar over the top of it.
Yeah, the diagram. Yeah.
It's well, first of all, I edited all those notes. The translators would flag things that we wanted to discuss and provide research notes, but I put all those things together and edited them. And that's a big part of what I did over the years is editing, dialogue editing, notes editing, writing the stupid blurbs on the packages. Basically, anytime there's a dumb joke, that's me. So our sort of like design goal, if you will, was that with both the liner notes and the actual subtitles, we wanted the US viewers to have the same kind of like emotional journey or emotional experience watching the show as a Japanese viewer would. And that's why we had to do the liner notes, was to give sort of like the cultural background and explain like the little jokes and quirks of Japanese culture that, especially at that time, most American viewers wouldn't really catch on. The classic one is, well, there are two. One is somebody getting a nosebleed, and the other is someone sneezing. Two characters bad mouthing a third character, and they cut to the third character, and the third character sneezes.
Right.
Yeah. That those kind of little cultural things. If you know them, then that adds to your experience of watching the film.
Right.
If you don't know them, it just flies completely over your head, and you're wondering, like, why did that just happen?
What? Why did they cut to that character sneezing? That makes no sense.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But if we have the liner notes, so that they're basically Cliff's notes for culture, then now suddenly you get the joke.
I guess that would have been kind of the more like the standard, I guess, at that time. And then obviously, like, you come around to like I guess a good example would be like Fully Cooley, where they just started straight up just like changing localizing it, essentially, where you change like jokes from talking about whatever would make sense culturally in that context to something that would make sense in a Western context. Did y'all ever kind of experiment with doing anything like more like that, or was it always just kind of maintaining like the spirit of the work, I guess, and with the cultural kind of context?
Yeah, well, for the titles that we did, I think that it was the cultural aspects of them and that kind of stuff was kind of important. I mean, when you go to dubbing as opposed to subtitling, then you have more latitude and you have different creative choices. And then, you've got to change the puns, and you have to make it flow for somebody who doesn't read the liner notes as much as you can. So it's a different translational challenge. Okay. And that's something also that we learned along the way when we started doing dubbing, because nobody knew how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you look at some of our early dubs, you'll see that there's a lot of experimentation in them. Some things that worked and some things that really didn't, as we kind of were feeling our way to the right way to do it.
A friend of ours has recently procured some old technology from like the 90s that would have been used to like dub anime or other things. And we got together with him over a Discord call one evening, and it's very haphazardly tried to dub an anime, and we learned a fair amount that it's like, okay, yeah, this is actually quite tedious.
As opposed to the Japanese style of doing things, which is they basically run it like a radio play, and they will literally do 10-minute takes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went to watch a show being dubbed once, and literally they basically gathered all the actors. They don't do it one at a time. They gathered all the actors together, and they literally were just stepping up and back and forth in front of the microphone doing their lines.
Huh. It was only one mic?
Yep.
That sounds like a logistical
this was like
nightmare.
For a TV show. I forget which one it was. But yeah, I mean, they got to do one every week, and that's how they did it. And vocal effects, in this show they had I think there were some girl fighter pilots or something, and and they had to they had to do microphone effects, like when they're in their airplanes
Oh,
talking over
yeah.
their mics. And they would literally come up to the studio microphone with a styrofoam cup with the bottom torn out of it and talk through it.
They're doing the walkie-talkie, like.
Yeah. This was like 1990s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before digital.
Right.
Now it's all digital, and you know, you can do one person at a time, just like we traditionally did in the US. But back in the day, oh no, they that's why that's why the sync is often like a bit wonky.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's because they're literally live doing it like a radio play, watching the monitor.
Yeah. And someone makes a mistake, then you just probably roll the tape back and you pick up from where you left off, essentially.
Yeah, or they just do a retake and splice it in later.
Splice it in later.
Yeah.
I guess on the subject of like translating and localizing and stuff, I don't know how kind of familiar you are with the discourse on like AI translations or machine translation stuff that's kind of been going on recently. What do you, I guess, what do you make of like the kind of seeming push toward like not necessarily like machine translation, but algorithmic chat GPT translation, which is like a half step up from machine translation. What do you make of that, them seeming to kind of go in that direction?
I think it's a tool like any other tool that you can use well or you can use badly. Like on Macross 2, when I was reviewing, my wife Natsumi did her translation, and there were certain things that were a little bit complicated, and like I literally took those lines and ran them on Chat GPT and said, "Yeah, give me a translation, but explain your translation, why you've made these translation decisions." And I gave it a little background context, and that kind of explanation was helpful for me in figuring out like what words I should really use, what tone I really wanted for a particular thing. So, that kind of voicing of the characters and making sure that they use dialogue and words that are appropriate for that particular character is a big part of the art of doing good subtitles. And so I found it useful to be able to just bother ChatGPT rather than going up to my wife's office and bothering her. But then I would always like double check after I'd figured out what I thought was a good way of doing things. I would double check with her that, what I was doing was reasonable, which is something I've always done. I mean, once I come up with what I think is a good dialogue edit, because that's what we do. We do initial translation, and then we do a dialogue edit on that translation. And then once that's all done, Natsumi and I do a review of the dialogue edit to make sure we haven't gone too far or that we didn't misunderstand anything or stuff like that, and to make sure it's all coherent to the original Japanese. So like ChatGPT, which can be really insightful about, what's actually being implied by dialogue, especially if you prompt it to tell you those things rather than just prompt it to translate, is a useful tool. In terms of coming up with really good flowing subtitle dialogue, it's kind of an amateur. I mean, it does a good baseline. It can do a decent baseline translation, but it doesn't have the style and flow that a really good human dialogue editor or even me can do. At least it doesn't have it yet.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's always the thing.
So I may be retiring at just the right time.
Giving out while
Get
the
out
getting's
while you
good.
still can.
Yep.
Um,
Well, there's a saying that 90% of success is just showing up, and I think most of the rest is knowing when to leave.
I guess kind of going back into like anime and stuff. You're, I guess for our audience that doesn't know, because we didn't mention it, which at least not yet, but when you were working on video games, you were actually the co-creator of Wizardry, was the game
Yes.
series, and that has like a massive influence in Japan on a lot of different anime.
Yeah, as the saying goes, I'm big in Japan.
You can wear the shirt and it's not ironic.
Yeah, actually, I can.
But like, I guess people don't quite realize, like, you'll see like there'll be like a TikTok or something or a short or something that comes up as like the game that inspired this anime that you've never heard of and stuff like that. But I guess like the actual scope of it, I guess, can escape someone. Like this, like just this season, you have an anime called Dungeon Meshi airing. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's based off of, I think the author was really into like Wizardry 6. And so I think it's based off of the class system of Wizardry. And there's like other things that are going into it.
I think all like the
Well,
races.
just so you know, my involvement with Wizardry ended with Wizardry 4. That was the last one I directly worked on. Okay, but whatever.
But still, it's I think like all the races in that show as well, because like there's like 5 races, and I believe those like all of the original races from the first however many Wizardry games.
Yeah,
like humans, elves, hobbits, gnomes, and dwarves,
whatever they're called. Is it ever like surreal to you to like be at like a convention and like see somebody that's like dressed as something that was inspired by a work you worked on, and like they have no idea kind of who you are? Like this idea of like, I inspired the people that inspired you kind of thing. Is there ever like a weird surreal feeling with that?
To be honest, not really. I mean, you know, I am continually surprised by the longevity of Wizardry. In fact, I was just in Japan a couple of weeks ago on Wizardry-related business.
Really?
Yeah, because the sort of remaster of Wizardry. The
first one. Yeah.
So I went and did a little PR work for them, but you know, it's like looking back. It's a good game, and I worked very hard on it. I'm very proud of it, but it was also, as with so many things, it was the right people at the right place at the right time, and everything came together, and we caught all the right breaks, and you know, like 40 years later, it's still an influence on my life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had told me that when I was working on the game, I would have told you you're on drugs.
There's no way this is going to be a massive success, especially in Japan. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, for example, one of the reasons it was so popular in Japan is because there's a lot of Japanese culture references in it. There are characters that are Japanese. There are items, you know, there are ninjas and all that sort of stuff. And all that happened because Japan was really kind of cool back then because of the original TV miniseries Shogun.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Because of Shogun, which I watched and Andy watched, you know, that was sort of like it was in our mind space. God, Japanese stuff is really cool. I mean, you know, we should put ninjas in. We should put samurai in. We should put like a katana blade because that would be cool. And if we hadn't done that, would Wizardry have been so big in Japan? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Was that a conscious decision on our part? Oh yeah, we got to do this because of the international rights? Of course not. It had nothing to do with it. We just did it because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least like it seemed like something silly and cool to do. But that happened to have far-reaching consequences.
Real quick, have you seen the new Shogun show on Hulu?
Of course I've seen it. Natsume and I watched it together.
Ah, I need to check it out still. I've heard great things about it, and everything I've seen looks massive in scope.
I'll tell you two things. First of all, when Natsume watches a show that's set in Japan, she's like hypercritical of any Japanese dialogue. I mean, she's going like, stop it, that was awful. Like it's just like. So she sat down to watch this show, and she was ready to rip it a new one, and she couldn't because the actual Japanese dialogue and the actual period Japanese dialogue is pretty good. Okay. And she was so upset that she couldn't.
It's good.
She was just like desperately hoping for a mistake somewhere. But here's Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays who plays Toranaga, who was played by Toshiro Mifune in the original. And of course, we released a bunch of Toshiro Mifune films back in the day. Do you know what basically one of his first acting jobs was?
No.
He voice acted Jiro in Kamui no Ken, The Dagger of Kamui, which Animeigo released. Which was one of our early releases, too.
Comes full circle.
Yep.
You were inspired by Shogun, and then... Is the new Shogun, is that like a remake of the original?
Yeah, it's
an adaptation of a book.
It's not a remake of the original miniseries. It's a reboot of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or close to it.
Yeah. See, if we're going outside of anime, I don't know anything. I'm a
That's true. Yeah.
Outside of anime.
Getting Mumi to watch anything that's not like a live action movie is like I had to like drag him to I only just got him to watch Godzilla -1 like a couple weeks ago.
It's good.
It's good. You should have seen it in theaters.
I wanted to.
He just doesn't like going outside.
Yeah, no. I spend enough time outside, thank you. I guess on the subject of like surreal, so when you meet, when you would meet with people as far as like for licensing and stuff like that, were you meeting with just like, the president or like whoever managed like licenses and stuff like that? Or were you ever meeting like actual directors or kind of names on the staff themselves?
Mostly it would be like the licensing people. Occasionally we would meet with some of the major staff and we get to know people. It varied considerably, so we know like guys like Mikimoto very well. We know what his favorite what his favorite family restaurant is. That's that sort of stuff. Whenever we see him, he has one restaurant he likes to meet at.
Is it
that kind of thing?
Was like a royal host or?
I am sworn to secrecy.
Is it ever like kind of weird to meet like with these people that you are kind of working on their projects and kind of being like, oh, these are like actual people, or is it kind of like the thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's just my job kind of thing?
It's not weird for me because I enjoy anime. I like working on it, but I don't consider myself like a quote fan, unquote. So I don't have that kind of fan relationship with I wouldn't be like gushing over somebody because of something they'd worked on.
Sure.
I would be appreciative of it, and I would appreciate the skill and talent that person has, and acknowledge that, of course. But it's not like that kind of like, oh my God, you did this. That's just not the way I work.
Sure.
Have you ever gotten reactions like that, like from other people because of like Wizardry or your position at Animeigo?
Yeah, and when I've been on the receiving end of that kind of attention, it's a little bit like discomforting. So like, because I have received that sometimes, it's not bad or anything like that. It's just like, it's the discomfort of this other person like expressing that you're a much like more talented and better person than you actually are.
Sure.
Yeah.
Almost like you're
Right?
being depersoned, almost like elevated to some.
Yeah, it's like, it's because they never see all the mistakes you make. And you can be good and talented and very skilled at something, but that you still put on your socks one at a time.
Right.
It's that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So because I understand that, or at least I have some understanding of it, I don't want to inflict that on anybody else.
Sure. How like you kind of talked about it being difficult to get in contact with different licensing and stuff, and you kind of talked about how Okada was instrumental in kind of opening that door and kind of getting your foot in the door in that way. If say hypothetically there was like, I don't know, like a podcast or something that wanted to get in contact with anyone in the industry on the Japanese side, do you have any kind of like advice or like any kind of I guess like anecdote kind of thing as far as getting in contact with these people, or how difficult it is or isn't?
These days, I would just find out their email and send them a really nice email in good Japanese. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you won't get a reply. But as I told my kids when they were little, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, you got to put yourself out there for sure. I definitely. I mean, we do that on the English side already.
Yeah.
You get rejected a lot.
You were one of the 10% that replied to our email.
We get a lot of people.
We
get a lot of guests on, but yeah, we send out a lot of emails, and it's like, hey, would you be interested in coming and talking to us? And then you just never get a response.
Don't get a reply back.
It is what it is.
Well, I guess I'm of the older generation where the expectation is you answer your damn mail. So even if it's, when people email me, and please don't email me unless you have to, but when people email me about stuff like this, I mean, I may have to say no, but at least I'll like hit reply.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's always appreciated.
Yeah,
because like, yeah, when you don't know if they've seen it, you're always kind of like, oh, did I like get the wrong email? Should I try reaching out to another avenue? So even if you were to say
is
no,
always appreciated over non-response.
Yeah. Even if you were to say no, that's still so much better than just like getting no response.
Yeah.
So, but we do appreciate you coming on.
Well, because Mumi, you bring up Toshio Okada, and and yeah, so he was like a big in terms of getting your foot in the door for licensing anime. We've gone through a lot of podcasts, and we know about the story where he introduced you to your wife, which was very sweet.
Yeah, I think so.
But Gainax being a video game company as well, have you at Animeigo ever like considered or attempted to license Japanese video games as well?
No, we were just way too busy with the anime stuff. And the whole point was just to stay busy doing interesting work.
Mhm.
And I stayed busy doing interesting work and have done since, for 30 years. So more than 30 years now.
Yeah.
So, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody had come to me with an interesting project that I could do on the side kind of thing, yeah, maybe I would have done something. But in terms of like starting up a whole new business, just did not have the bandwidth.
Is it significantly different to localize and distribute a video game as opposed to like an anime?
Yeah, they're given the fact that I was sort of, you remember Wizardry got localized into Japanese, and I helped with that effort, so I know how much work it is.
Sure.
Oh yeah. I'd imagine they're different beasts, and there can be a lot more to translate depending on how much written dialogue is in some Japanese games. Like a visual novel has tens of thousands of lines of dialogue.
Oh yeah. I guess that you kind of mentioned that you don't really consider yourself a fan, but you like anime. Do you think you might delve into and maybe watch more anime now that you are retired? Once you get out of the initial phases of keeping yourself busy,
retirement.
do you think you might end up delving more into anime at all?
Well, if the first few months of my alleged retirement is any guide, I will have much less time for watching anime. But I don't know. I've always said that I just view anime as sort of a choice in how to tell a story,
mm-hmm.
and it's one that was kind of guided by both, prior artistic and economic factors in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I've said this many times that I think that a lot of the really great anime directors, if they had happened to have been born in the United States, would have become great live action directors. It's just that the economic circumstances are such that in Japan, if you want to express yourself, you do it in anime. I mean, if James Cameron had been born in Japan, he would have been an anime director.
Right. Yeah. You would have made an Avatar. It just would have been an anime instead.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, that's just kind of like the circumstances of it all.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, I'm not a fan of anime. I am a fan of movies,
mm-hmm.
some of which happen to be anime movies. Some of which happen to be Japanese live action movies.
Right. Yeah.
Many of which happen to be American movies or French movies. It's like, I enjoy watching films.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not particular about the particular style of the film.
Well, would you say that because you've been involved with the anime industry and even the Japanese just film industry in general for the past 30 years. So do you feel like doing your work at Animeigo, how has that impacted your perception of anime, if it has at all?
Well, that's actually a tough question. I guess I have a better appreciation of just how much work it is, how
mm-hmm.
hard it is to do this stuff. And so, that when I see stuff, especially in stuff from the 80s and 90s in the pre-digital era, where they did some really crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's one example that sticks in my mind. I think it's from Bubblegum Crisis, but they did. You know how they have a background pan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where they have a background and they pan across the background?
Right.
There's this one shot where they do a pan. It's a quick pan, and it kind of rotates for a perspective, and then pans in another direction. And they simulate this perspective in the shot, and the actual like background like painting they did isn't like a vertical or a horizontal strip. It's kind of like these two strips that are connected together at an angle.
Okay.
And so it's this sort of like anamorphically distorted background painting that they then like do a camera move on to simulate this 3D effect. And I saw the actual painting. Wait a minute. It might have been from Genesis Survivor Gaia Earth. Well, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the point was the kind of like cleverness of how they managed to get the shot was like really has stuck in my mind. Like 30, 40 years later, I still remember. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember, damn, they did something really cool in this shot. And like if I can dig up the shot, I would love to remember exactly where it's from. Because if you see this shot, you'll look at it and go like, how the hell did they do that in the like 80s? And the way they did it was like this bizarre distorted background painting on multiple axes. And then they basically flew the camera over it.
That sounds like for a shot that probably lasts maybe a couple seconds, that sounds like just such an inordinate amount of work in order to just photograph, essentially, let alone like all the logistics to get to the photography point.
But in terms of the storytelling, consider if they'd wanted to do that and they had to animate each frame.
Yeah.
As opposed to using this crazy distorted background painting. Okay? They found the brilliance of this was they found a way to get the effect they wanted with a single static painting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then just a little bit of cleverness on how they move that painting underneath the camera.
And that's kind of how anime is kind of defined, I guess, right? Is how they utilize kind of a lot of times how they utilize limited animation and kind of work around technical difficulties, either through just if they just have like static person standing on screen or whatever, to kind of more intuitive or ingenuitive kind of camera work, like you're kind of describing for like parallaxing shots and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like it makes sense that you would start to appreciate that more having to see it on like the production side, where you're just like, what? How the hell do you even do this?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the hallmark of really great work, and this isn't just in movies or anime, of making the most out of the resources that you have. Like great engineering is there's the old saying that an engineer is someone who can do for $1 what any idiot can do for $2. So like for me, whether it's anime or the design of a 3D printed part or whatever, it's the cleverness and economy and what's the right word? Conciseness? No. The kind of compactness of it, the efficiency of it, that I appreciate the most. Where and it can be in anything, it can be in like I say, mechanical design or software, or clever user interface. That's, when you can see and understand and appreciate the kind of work that went into making it so clean and simple, that's what I really appreciate.
And you said you don't remember what this is from?
I don't remember what show it's from. It definitely was from a show that we worked on.
Okay.
Because I actually at one point had the physical background pan cell that was just given to me.
Oh.
I'm now going to go through your entire back catalog and try and figure out what this was.
Right. Yes.
Because it sounds interesting.
Yeah. Everyone listening has to go out and buy everything we ever did and go look for
It's a scavenger hunt for one specific.
I'm sure that, probably like within like 2 hours of the podcast coming out, somebody will post in the comments, well, actually.
Honestly, that'd be great, because then it's like, oh, now I'm going to go out of my way and go watch it.
Now we know. I guess on the subject of appreciating anime, I'm sure you're asked what your favorite anime is quite a bit, but I'll ask, do you have a kind of like a really deep cut anime that you don't really ever get the chance to talk about that you appreciate or enjoy?
Sort of, kind of, no. There are shows that I really deeply love. Tonari no Totoro. Ghost in the Shell. Bubblegum Crisis,
Mm-hmm.
Although I've watched it altogether too many times. But, there's a couple of episodes of Urusei Yatsura that I just like deeply love, that I thought were just so brilliantly done.
Do you know what episodes those were?
Well, the one that always comes to mind, and the wild thing about Urusei Yatsura is, unlike most TV shows, it got better pretty much throughout its entire run.
That's kind of what I found. I'm not finished with it. I've been watching it very slowly. I think it's been like 7 or 8 years now. I've been kind of working through it. But yeah, like the first, like whenever they were kind of still doing the 15-minute segments, and before they like merged them into like one episode, that was really slow for me. And as it's kind of progressed, it's gotten like exponentially better.
Yeah, that's it. They found the magic formula. They found their sort of secret formula Coke, and then they just kept refining it over years. But no, the episode of Urusei Yatsura that I always point people to is, it's one of the later seasons. It's the one where they all go to the public bath, where like the girls' side is separated from the boys' side by this kind of big barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And the boys spend the entire episode, like Ataru wants to peek underneath the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Mendo doesn't want him to, and all that sort of stuff. And it's just brilliantly hilarious. And the payoff at the end is just epic. I won't spoil it for you.
I think I've seen that episode. Is that the one where the bath is like really massive? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Well, it's like two sides separated by a kind of a barrier wall, but the water goes underneath the sides.
Okay.
Between the two sides.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
I love that episode. I think they just completely knocked it out of the park on that one.
Yeah, there are a lot of the kind of, I guess, quote unquote filler episodes, because it's not, a lot of the original Urusei Yatsura adaptation just kind of deviates from the manga.
Yeah.
A lot of those were some of my favorite ones, like the episode where they like, go to the library and like all the books are like coming to life. Like that's always one that stands out to me. And they do some really trippy stuff with that show, where like Altu's mom's like going in and out of dream sequences, and like it's such a good show. I think everybody should watch it, but obviously everyone's now just going to gravitate toward the new one.
Oh yeah, the new one's out. Although I've heard good things about the new one. We need to continue watching it though. Yeah.
I need to continue watching the old one too.
Yeah. I I guess in terms of deep cut anime though, there is a Wizardry OVA. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Do you have any thoughts
Next
on
question.
it? No, next question.
Yeah, I keep getting asked why didn't we ever license it, and the answer is it's complicated, but the rights were never available.
Mm-hmm.
I probably, it's pretty formulaic. I probably would have done it if I could have gotten the rights. I would have done it for shits and giggles.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, because it's not like it's the most popular thing in the world, and it's kind of like, oh, one of the creators of Wizardry is releasing the Wizardry OVA. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it would be lovely. It would be lovelily recursive.
Yeah.
I guess on the subject of wizardry and influence, are you familiar? I don't know how familiar you are with like new anime or like trends and stuff like that. Are you familiar with the isekai genre at all?
Only from occasional like things I see on Reddit,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't really interest me that much.
That's fair. It's just interesting because it is like still in that lineage, because like Wizardry was obviously very influential on JRPGs, and then many isekai, at least from what I've been told, are made by people who thought about making a JRPG, realized how much work that would take, so they made like a light novel instead.
Well, there's been a huge amount of like wizardry related stuff in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like in terms of all of the wizardry like goodies that I have, like almost all of them came from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
They did like everything, playing cards. I mean, when it comes to character goods, the Japanese have no equals.
They do have the market cornered when it comes to trinkets and clear files and all that stuff. I guess speaking of Japan, I know you travel there a lot. Do you have any kind of like, I guess, travel recommendations? I don't know how often y'all kind of just go off the beaten path and just do, some touristy thing just to kind of relax or anything. But is there anything that you've kind of done that's not just, what someone would do in Tokyo with their first week there and never go back kind of thing that you would recommend to people?
Well, we did all of our touristy stuff back in the 90s.
Oh, sure.
So that I can't advise on, but I can advise you on where to go. I can advise you on where to stay. And if you're in Tokyo or any major city, there is a hotel chain called Super Hotel Lojas, which is the best I can explain it to you. It's the Japanese equivalent of Holiday Inn Express.
Okay.
It's inexpensive, the typical small room, but it has everything you need and nothing you don't need. Like the current yen rate is like $75 a night, and that includes a nice breakfast in the morning. Okay. But almost all of these hotels have one feature that makes them absolutely the best place to stay if you are traveling from the US. They all have an in-hotel, almost all of them, some of them don't, but almost all of them have an in-hotel Sento that's open almost 24 hours.
Oh.
Like a public bath in the hotel for the hotel guests only. So you get in from the US, you're jet lagged out the wazoo, you just go and get yourself nice and clean, and then you soak in there in the hot pool for like 30 minutes. It is so good at helping you reset your clock. And like big hotel doesn't have it. Now, Simi and I have been staying at this hotel chain every time we go to Tokyo for like the last 10 years. We have never used the shower in the hotel room in that entire time.
Yeah, the tubs are not very
Well, they
spacious.
have the typical small, deep Japanese tub. We use it for storing our luggage. Okay? Because, a couple times a day, we just go down to the Sento and clean ourselves up and then just soak. It is great. And like the big fancy hotels, they don't have that.
Huh. Is that something, do they market that at all? Like, hey, we have Sento. Huh.
The lohas means something, I forget what it means, but it's lifestyles of health and sustainability or something like that. But yeah, definitely you can just Google Super Hotel Lohas.
Okay.
And find them. And I absolutely guarantee you, not only will you spend a lot less money and have an all-you-can-eat breakfast every morning, but you will get over your jet lag significantly faster. And it is just so much more pleasant.
There you go. There's your Weeb Crew travel to Japan tip of the episode. For some reason, travel tips have just been a common thing on the past couple episodes.
Well, we just gotta become a travel podcast.
Specifically to Japan.
That's where the money is. That's where we've been going for a little bit. We shouldn't take up much more of your time. But I guess, is there anything that you kind of want to point our audience or anyone that's listening to that you have coming up, or any like social medias or something you're working with or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, we're doing the Macross too. You can check it out on Kickstarter, and that has a link to where you can late order it. Same deal as the Kickstarter. So, there's no penalty for being late. And, if you like what we do, support Justin, because he's going to be doing more of it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what he does.
I saw he was doing like once a month, I guess, in 2025. Is that what they're kind of planning for?
You would have to ask him. I cannot speak for the man, but I am looking forward to seeing, what directions he takes it in, because he's definitely going to do his own thing, and that's fine. That it's his the sort of mass market aspect of the company. That's his baby now, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with it. And he'll probably do some things that I never would have considered that will end up being great, or they'll end up being disasters.
Hopefully not.
But that's how things go. I mean, I've done things that I thought were going to be great, and they turned out to be disasters. And things that I did just because I thought I just want to do that. It's not going to make any money, but I like it. Turned out to be really great. So.
Well, awesome.
I think that's good advice for any sort of endeavor, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like, if you do something just for the money, if it fails, you're going to feel horrible. But if you do something that you think will make money, but you really enjoy doing, then nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take the final product away from you. You did something you enjoyed, and if it succeeds, great. And if it fails, then at least you spent, you only have a certain amount of time. We all kind of kick the bucket sooner or later. And what counts is how well you spend that time, how efficient you are at spending that time. So, don't waste time doing stuff you don't want to do.